Hey everyone, thanks again for coming out for this virtual session. I think we'll get started now. First, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to spend the next hour with us today. My name is Sarah Beer, and I'm a community engagement consultant with ISL, helping to moderate today's session on the 2nd Avenue North Parking and Public Realm project. First off, we will be recording the presentation part of this session today, so the recording will be posted to the Project Engage page next week for those who couldn't join us or stay for the entire presentation today. So we will be recording this session. Joining with me today are my ISL colleagues and City of Saskatoon staff. I'll pass it over to my ISL team member and the City of Saskatoon to also introduce themselves. So first, Devin, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Devin Chakowski and I'm a transportation engineer with ISL.
Jack Mason with ISL, transportation engineer.
Hi, everybody. My name's Natalie Bode, and I'm the engineering manager for the transportation department with the city. You're muted, Sarah.
Sarah, you're muted.
Well, it's bound to happen to someone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Zhang. I'm a transportation engineer with the City of Saskatoon, and I am the city project manager for the 2nd Avenue North Parking and Public Realm Planning Project.
And Isaac?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Isaac Danko, and I'm the public engagement consultant with the city, and I'm the engagement consultant for this project.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. So before we also get started, we also want to recognize that we're in a virtual meeting and there are people joining from various parts of Turtle Island. We recognize that those of us in Saskatoon are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and the Nakota Sioux. Underneath a living sky, we are situated on lands and rivers that have nurtured and nourished many First Nations and Métis for millennia. We honor the ancestors whose footsteps have marked these lands, a place that welcomes people from around the world to make their home here. So we call on everyone in our community to build a stronger understanding of all peoples who dwell on this land we call home. So with that, I would like to get started, but I'd just like to explain how today's session is going to go. So with the agenda, today's session is intended to provide some additional information on the 2nd Avenue North Parking and Public Realm project. In a moment, I'm going to do a quick refresher on the Microsoft Teams features, just in case not all of you are familiar with this tool. I'll then pass it over to Devin and Jack, who will take you through a presentation for about 30 minutes. And with the time remaining, we'll then open the floor up for questions. We may not be able to get to all your questions today, but we'll certainly take them back to the broader team and include a question and answer section on the Project Engage page. So just for a quick Teams overview of this tool that we're using today, let's run through some of the features and make sure everyone has access to the main screen and the Q&A box. So to be mindful of all attendees today and limit the amount of background noise and potential disruption that we could have, we will be keeping everyone on mute. We ask that you submit any questions you have by using the Q&A feature. If you'd like to submit a question or comment, click on Ask a Question, which is featured here on this slide. It will then take you to the My Questions tab, where you can type a question into the Ask a Question box. And that's how we'll proceed with questions. So like I said, we'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A, but we'll wait until the end of the presentation to run through the questions you may have. Questions will be available for everyone to see. If you have a question similar to another person's, you can click the like button, and this will help avoid duplicate questions. To use live captions in a meeting, go to your meeting controls at the top of the screen and select More. So go to More, and then Language and Speech. And then you can turn on live captions to read exactly what we're saying here. So if you have any difficulties with this throughout the session, we encourage you to email or call the team to set up a time for a one-on-one chat. So with all of that, I will pass it over to Devin to take us through the first part of the presentation. Devin?
Great, thank you, Sarah. I'll just pull up a slide here that shows what we're looking at. So the City of Saskatoon, as we mentioned, along with ISL Engineering, is planning to make 2nd Avenue an even better place, especially around the new proposed library. This project is going to take a look at around 2 blocks of 2nd Avenue North. On the south end, it starts just south of 23rd Street East, and it'll extend to the north, just north of 25th Street East. It also includes the section of 24th Street, which is just west of 2nd Avenue, and that extends to the alley behind the future library you can see on the screen. There are 3 project goals at the initiation of this project. One was to improve accessible parking options along 2nd Avenue in this section. Second was to make the corridor more accessible for everyone. And the third was to beautify the area to make it more welcoming to the public. After our analysis, the preferred option will aim to provide accessible on-street parking, a loading zone, public on-street parking, and an accessible and welcoming public area that connects to the new library. So why are we doing this? The Saskatoon Public Library submitted a letter to Saskatoon City Council on January 5th of 2023 that the 2nd Avenue North adjacent to the new library should be reconstructed to enhance accessibility at the street level. The city's Standing Policy Committee on Transportation met in early January. The committee directed administration to work with the Saskatoon Public Library on a funding and project delivery model for the redesign of 2nd Avenue, and to provide a supplementary report. At the council meeting on January 25th of 2023, the administration presented the report to council. Council directed the administration to proceed with the study for redesign of 2nd Avenue in partnership with the library. So that's how we got this project started. Next, we'll look at the 3 project phases. There's 3 project phases. So phase 1, we looked at the existing conditions. Phase 2 is the concept development, and phase 3 is the functional plan. There are 2 rounds of engagement within that project timeline. The first round of engagement was held with key interested parties to discuss the existing conditions in the project area. And after considering the feedback from the first round and the project team's background and existing conditions review, the project team developed 8 options for 2nd Avenue. We're now in the second phase of engagement. So based on evaluation of options and feedback from the city, we have narrowed it down to 1 preferred option, which we will share with you here today. And then later on in the summer, we will finalize that recommended plan and present it to the Standing Policy Committee on Transportation. So look back, some of this information was presented at the first engagement session, but the existing conditions along 2nd Avenue, the photo on the screen is showing you the 25th Street and 2nd Avenue intersection looking south towards downtown. The future library parcel is located on the right-hand side of this photo where you can see the fenced-off parcel. This section of roadway has 4 lanes of through traffic, which is 2 in both the north and south directions, plus left turn lanes at the intersection and parallel parking lanes on the outskirts for a total of 7 lanes. There's approximately 1.8 meter wide sidewalk along this section with vertical curbs. As you can see in the photo, there's limited place for plantings in the amenity space, which is between the sidewalk and the curb. The next photo I have to show you is the same intersection, except we're looking northbound. You can see the same features with a vertical curve and a 1.8 meter sidewalk. You can also see a concrete median in the center of the roadway. The next photo I have is the 24th and 2nd Ave intersection. This is much of the same cross section that you're looking at. You can see the future library site on the far side of the intersection on the left-hand side. So we're looking northbound in this photo. Again, we have 4 through lanes of traffic, 2 each way, plus left turn lanes and parallel parking lanes for 7 lanes total. And you have the concrete median and vertical curbs on the outsides. 23rd is a little bit different of an intersection. Right here, we're at 23rd and 2nd looking south towards downtown. And this is where it switches from 2 through lanes of traffic to 4 through lanes of traffic. So south of 23rd, we have angled parking, a little bit more amenity and boulevard space. But you can see north of 23rd, we still have the concrete median and the vertical curbs. There is a curb extension present in the, I guess it'd be the northwest quadrant, which provides for a shorter crosswalk distance. So I mentioned the first round of engagement. So the project team carried out an in-person workshop session with interested and affected parties on February 7th, 2024. The purpose of the in-person workshop was to work directly with city staff and external interested and affected parties to hear their input on 3 topic areas. Those topic areas were accessible parking, inclusive street access for everyone, and making the street beautiful and welcoming to all. So we gathered everyone's feedback, and there were 4 key themes that we heard. So the first key theme was accessible parking and street access. Participants emphasized exploring different parking options, optimizing accessible parking near the main entrances, and ensuring streets are inclusive with accessible curbs and ramps, all while adhering to the Canadian Standards Association 2018 guidelines. Pedestrian safety and sustainable infrastructure was the second key theme. Participants described measures to enhance pedestrian safety, including pedestrian-only areas, improved lighting, and clear signage. Sustainable infrastructure involves using durable materials and addressing low-impact development practices. The third key theme was traffic and public transit management. Participants shared strategies to reduce noise and traffic congestion, including noise buffers and limited access points, enhancing public transit access with adequate space for stops, and promoting public transit use to lessen reliance on personal vehicles was also highlighted. And then the last key theme that we had was community amenities and urban design. Participants stressed that the design should aim to make streets beautiful and welcoming by adding amenities like dog parks, plaza spaces, and benches, while also considering commercial development to boost economic activity and urban vibrancy. So that's the background and where we got. I'm going to pass it over to Jack, and he's going to walk through some of the option evaluation that we did.
Thanks, Devin. Yeah, so when we developed these options, there was kind of 3 main parts of elements that kind of varied between the different options. So think of it like making a sandwich. You got your bread, your meat, and your toppings, and you kind of want to select one of each and see what you come up with. So first is kind of the number of blocks. Do we just do the north block in front of the library? Do we do the north and the south blocks all the way down to 23rd Street? Or do we just do kind of less than 1 whole block and just kind of some spot improvements? And then when you're done picking your blocks, Isaac, what's the next one there? Then the number of lanes. So do you go down to 2 lanes total, so 1 lane each direction, like you have south of 23rd already? 4 lanes as kind of a, maintaining more space for traffic, or do you stick with the existing 5 lanes? And then finally your toppings. In this case, that's the parking type there, Isaac, if we can bring that up. Yeah, parking type. And so just deciding between parallel and angle parking. And so kind of each of the 8 options we came up with was kind of combination of one of these options for each one. So if we can go to the next slide. So here we can see kind of the 8 options and how they kind of break down. So option 1, no changes. Option 2, both blocks. Option 3, the north block only. Option 4, kind of the spot improvement or minor changes. And then kind of within those, there were kind of some sub options that you can see here. Doing nothing, 2 lanes with angle parking, 2 lanes with parallel parking, etc. And kind of the last one, the minor changes, is just doing the accessible parking spaces. So we ended up selecting 3 of these kind of initial 8 options to study further and move forward, and you can see those there. So doing both blocks with 2 lanes of traffic and angle parking, so very similar to what you see south of 23rd Street on 2nd Avenue already, but just kind of with a more updated modern twist. Then option 3 with 4 lanes and parallel parking, kind of just an alternate there to kind of align a little bit with the downtown event and entertainment district plan. And then option 4, just kind of the minor changes and doing the accessible parking spaces that the library has requested without really going into a full rebuild of either block. So these are kind of the evaluation criteria we used. As I mentioned, kind of does it align with the city center plan or the deed objectives, accessibility, public space, landscaping, traffic safety and operations, those kind of things, and of course, cost. So next slide. So this is option 1, and basically, do nothing. It has no cost, which is great. It fits everyone's budget. It also has no benefits because there's no change to the existing roadway, and frankly, these 2 blocks are not, what you'd call the most vibrant part of 2nd Avenue. And doesn't really do anything with the streetscaping to help improve that. And the biggest reason and why we didn't really look at this any further was because it doesn't meet the library's need for accessible parking, and that was kind of the whole impetus behind this in the first place. So let's look at the better options. So this is the angle parking option. So you can see there's lots of space for trees because we're going down to 2 driving lanes. We have the angle parking. We've got large seating areas. You'll kind of notice these compared to further south on 2nd Avenue, kind of the mid-block amenity spaces with the trees and the seating and stuff are a lot longer than you have on the existing areas. And then at each block, you have curb extensions with a few other spaces for amenities. So let's take a look at those on the next slide, or sorry, the next slide, the north block. Yeah, and so here you can see it's basically the same design from the south block to the north block. There's very little difference, but here you can see how things would work with the library, and you could do a mid-block crossing in the middle. Again, similar to the block south of 23rd Street. Having the mid-block crossing so people can cross right basically to the entrance of the library without having to go to an intersection. And again, large seating areas, lots of opportunities to put in trees and kind of other amenities. And so the cost for this, you're rebuilding an entire block, and our kind of estimates at the moment are looking like about $3 million per block. So for both blocks would be $6 million total. So let's take a look at kind of the amenities areas in a little more detail. Here you can see a little better what we're suggesting. So trees, some vegetation, some grasses, some bushes, whatever. Maybe some picnic tables, benches, bike racks, some movable furniture. Just like a little table and chairs for people to sit at and kind of adjust them the way they want. And so there's really, a lot of like this entire space is, reclaiming it from the roadway and kind of making it a nice space for people to hang out rather than kind of just being a wide expanse of pavement like it is today. So next up. So this is the parallel parking option. So you can see here, you're maintaining 4 driving lanes on the road. So the road itself is a lot wider, and as a result, there's a lot less space for kind of seating areas and amenities. There is a lot of space for trees. There's enough space to kind of widen the sidewalk, plant new trees, and create a bit of seating area, either kind of at the corner or in the mid-block area. Not as much as with the previous option though. And the estimated cost for this, about 2.6 million. So not really a huge difference from the 3 million we're looking at for the previous option, because rebuilding a block is rebuilding a block, and there isn't a huge difference in cost. And here you can see a zoom in of kind of what you could fit in these mid-block areas. Maybe a couple benches, a couple of picnic tables, that kind of thing, but not much else. And so this is option 4. This is basically doing the minimum that you need to help the library with its needs for accessible parking and a bus loading zone. So you can see on 24th Street, you're creating a pocket for buses to pull off and park in front of the library there. And then there's the accessible parking spaces on 2nd Avenue. The kind of the impetus behind this option is, you know, as we mentioned, kind of the other options are kind of in the multiple millions of dollars, and you know the city doesn't necessarily have a budget for these kind of things right at the moment. And if kind of the funding doesn't really materialize for that, this would be a much lower cost thing you could do that's kind of more short term in nature, that would, you know, give the library what it needs in the short term. The other kind of part of this is, as I'm sure you're aware, the downtown event and entertainment district is still kind of in the planning stages, and we're not really sure what that'll mean for what's required on 2nd Avenue, as well as the bus rapid transit is coming to 1st Avenue. And so just these two projects are pretty big and could have some impacts that might change what you would want to do on 2nd Avenue. Maybe you need to maintain 4 lanes of traffic on these blocks. And so just kind of doing this kind of short-term, smaller scale construction really kind of leaves the door open for whatever in the future, and doesn't involve a huge capital cost up front. And so here you can see a little bit of the detail. So really, it's really just, you know, one corner of the intersection at 24th and 2nd that would be affected. You take out some curb, you put down maybe a tree, maybe some paving stones and stuff like you have in other parts of downtown. You've got space for maybe some planters, maybe a garbage can, a couple benches. And that's really about it. The rest of the block stays the way it is. And so we did an evaluation of these options, and the option 2A, the angle parking with 2 lanes, is the preferred long-term plan for this option. The main reason for this is because, you know, it looks and feels a lot like the rest of 2nd Avenue. The city center plan kind of has this designated as a pedestrian priority street. I think you'd have a hard time making the case that the 4-lane option is really much of a pedestrian priority street. It's definitely better than what it currently is, but I think this accomplishes kind of that goal of being inviting for people and having space for people that aren't in cars to spend time here, and kind of really I guess vibing with with the redevelopment of the library site, you know, with the trees and the paths and everything there, it really kind of works with that with the library site really well. So that's the preferred long-term plan. And next up, preferred short-term plan if necessary, and you know, in the interest of budget and flexibility for potential future impacts from DEED or the BRT. If the city you know, doesn't have the $6 million to just put down on Second Avenue, this is kind of the lower cost, shorter term option that really kind of leaves the door open for whatever in the future. And next up, I think I'm done.
Thank you, Jack. So now actually we can invite you to share any questions, any comments that you would have about the preferred option in the Q&A chat there. So please feel free to post your comments or questions in the chat, and the project team will answer them in the order that they come in. So please post your questions or comments. I'm not seeing any questions or comments come up at the moment. And we can hang on another minute or two.
We've got lots of time for questions. We'd love to get some great questions, people.
Okay, great. We have a question here. So someone's asking, with the short-term parking option that is parallel parking, how would the wheelchair user who parks in the accessible spot get onto the sidewalk without moving in traffic?
Yeah, I can kind of field that one. It's a little tricky. We don't really know the full answer to that yet. I think there's still kind of some coordination and that kind of discussion with accessibility groups. I think the general answer is that, you know, we have to replace the curb along those accessible parking stalls, and so it wouldn't be a barrier curb. It would be kind of a very gentle ramp curb that a wheelchair can get up. So it would be accessible in that way. We're still looking at exactly like how wide we would need, because I know there's different configurations of vans. Some of them load out of the back, some of them load out to the side, and if you're loading out of the driver's side, that would be kind of tricky. But if you're loading off the passenger side, the parallel parking there and the lack of a vertical curb, like a nice gentle curb, would make it pretty easy for unloading a user on the passenger side. But again, just kind of some of these kind of details on exactly what kind of users there are out there and their kind of needs is still to be determined. Oh, we're getting more. I like this. Do you want me to just kind of
Jack,
keep going in
so
order here then?
there's one question. I really like the plan to have the mid-lock block crossing in option 2B. Was something like that considered when planning the temporary option 4? Devin or Jack, would you be able to weigh in there?
Yeah, so the temporary option 4 would not have a mid-block crossing. We considered kind of a mid-block crossing with the 4-lane option. The city kind of gave us the direction that they didn't really want to have a mid-block crossing with the 4-lane option, which, you know, you have to cross multiple lanes of traffic and kind of negotiate, you know, drivers not necessarily being able to see you as well when there's kind of that multiple lanes in each direction. So with the 4-lane option, it's not really the right environment for a mid-block crossing. So with the temporary one, which kind of maintains really like the 7-lane cross section, really, it's definitely not the kind of place where you'd want to have a mid-block crossing, and kind of, you know, why it's kind of a shorter term thing. It just doesn't really kind of give that pedestrian priority and, you know, streetscapey feel that that you would want for a mid-block crossing like that. Great question.
Okay, and we have a question here. It says, thank you for answering 2 of my 4 questions relationship to deed. What were the 8 options? Who were the interested and affected parties that were consulted for this project? What is the plan for transit on 2nd? Yeah,
I think maybe Natalie or Sarah might be better equipped to answer kind of the who was the interested parties. I think that in general, the transit plan for 2nd is that there is no transit really planned for 2nd. There's like a couple of bus routes that operate on this block currently, but I think the plan for that is for all the bus service to move over to 1st when the BRT is implemented. So there's not really a plan for buses to use 2nd in the long term.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, I'll take the part of the question regarding the interested parties. So for the interested parties in portion of the engagement, we consulted the businesses and residences directly adjacent to 2nd Avenue within the 2 blocks of the project area, as well as various accessibility groups within the city of Saskatoon, such as CNIB, the Canadian Institute for the Blind, the Navigators, Saskatoon Council on Aging, Saskabilities, the Bus Riders of Saskatoon, Inclusion Saskatchewan, Barrier Free Saskatchewan, Spinal Cord Injury Saskatchewan, as well as just overall the organization that is the downtown business district.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. We have a question here. I noticed that you have bike racks proposed. Is there any plan to have some of those bike lockers or more secured bike parking rather than just racks or posts?
I will actually field that one too. There is more limited space in the streetscape for, you know, larger bike lockers. In our discussions with the library administration, the library has indicated that they actually have rather extensive bike parking facilities that they plan on putting on their, that is going to be on their site. I am assuming closer to the doorways. They are also adjusting some of their landscaping and plaza plans at the moment, so that's not finalized, but they have indicated that they have extensive bike parking facilities on their site.
Thanks, Sarah. We have another question here. 1 second. Where are providing pickup and drop off for access transit and for visiting classes coming on the yellow school buses?
Yeah, so in addition to the accessible parking, the library also requested a bus parking bay. Isaac, if you want to just bring back a few slides there, we can kind of show that where that is. So that's on 24th Street. Yeah, if you go back in the presentation a few slides, Isaac, we can see the bus loading zone. Yeah, so there you go. So this is kind of the same for all options, is just kind of that frontage on 24th Street in front of the library, and where it says bus loading zone there. That's kind of the idea for buses. So like, especially with this option, the 2 lanes and the angle parking, it's not really the kind of road you want to have a bunch of buses coming down and trying to park in. Like, you can't really fit an angle parking spot for a bus here. And just kind of providing a bay for the buses on 2nd Avenue would take out a lot of kind of the amenity space. So that's kind of why we've got that shown on 24th Street. And so, yeah, that's where access transit or yellow school buses or chartered city buses, or I guess intercity buses would be able to park and load and unload for library visitors.
Thanks, Jack. We have another question here. Sorry, I'm just scrolling down. Are you planning to incorporate any bike lanes? How are cyclists likely to arrive to the area?
Yeah, so I guess from kind of a broader downtown perspective, the plan is for bike lanes to go along 3rd Avenue. We didn't really look at, specific cycling facilities along these 2 blocks, mostly because there's nothing really to connect to on either side, and that the plan is for 3rd Avenue, and that this is kind of a designated in the city center plan as a pedestrian priority street. I don't know if Natalie or Sarah, you want to add to that?
Sure, I can expand on that a little bit. So as Jack mentioned, 3rd Avenue is part of our designated downtown all ages and abilities cycling network, as well as Idlewild Drive and 19th Street. So that's kind of the main cycling routes. And then any street, obviously, cyclists can use to access the library. So they could be on 2nd, they could be on 24th or on 25th. They won't all be as friendly for cyclists depending on what is built on them. But 24th Street generally is fairly quiet and has fairly wide travel lanes, so people could move to the other lane to pass cyclists. So that's where I envision a lot of cyclists coming from, but we haven't developed all of that detail yet. Council asked us to hold off on further engagement on our downtown all ages and abilities network until the planning for the deed project and the VRT project advanced a little bit further. So we'll be having a bit more engagement involved on that downtown network before we proceed for funding applications or construction.
Awesome, thanks, Natalie. We have another question here and comment. They're saying it might be too early in the plans for this, but if it isn't, have you considered adding fruit trees and fruit shrubs as part of the collection of plants in the preferred long-term plan? Jack or Devin?
I'll actually field that.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
It is a little early in the plans for the details of what type of trees or shrubs that would be going into some of these planting areas that we're proposing. As for whether or not those are options in as the project moves further along, in the downtown, our focus with planting is generally, health of trees and longevity. So when we do get to that step, we will be looking at the type of trees, and they will generally be selected so that, they're trees that can survive and thrive kind of in a more roadside environment, where you get, higher people as well as vehicle volumes. They may or may not necessarily be fruit or shrubs that would thrive in those areas. So the type of plantings will be something that will be looked at in the detailed design part of the project as it moves along.
Thanks, Sarah. I think we've answered all the questions here in the queue. Are there any other questions, comments?
Yeah, great questions so far. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Still got like 15 minutes.
Any other burning questions?
Maybe while we're waiting, I can just make a comment. For those of you that are interested in this area of downtown, there has been some discussions around the library and what they might be doing, and we'd ask that you follow them through the library's webpage. I know that they've made some changes and from their initial plan. So if you're interested in what's proposed, I believe that they've made some changes and going to be releasing something in the near future as well.
Yeah, and just further to Devin's point, I did add the Saskatoon Central Library project page to the Q&A, so you can click on the link there to get more details.
Come on, I think we can get one more question out of you. It's been a good group, though. They've asked lots of good questions. Oh,
There's one new question, yeah.
One new question. Are you planning to have crossing lights at the mid-block crossing to assist people in crossing?
good question. I think kind of to be determined. I know the mid-block crossings south of 23rd Street are just the static pedestrian crosswalk signs. I think we could probably look at, like a rapid flashing beacon option for those, but I'm not sure it's super necessary, but could definitely be considered for sure. Sarah and Natalie, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I can add to that. We have a pedestrian crossing policy that we follow to determine when or where the appropriate locations are for crossings and which type of device would be appropriate there. And it follows national guidance. So we usually look at the crossing distance, the traffic volume, the speed of traffic. Those are kind of the main elements considered to determine if a crossing device is needed. So we would have to look at all of those elements before determining that.
Yeah, and I think kind of a key thing to highlight here too is with only one travel lane each direction and with very short crossing distances, a mid-block crossing with the angle parking option would not be that daunting of a crossing. You know, again, very similar to the existing crossings on 2nd south of 23rd. And, you know, again, not high vehicle speeds, not super high vehicle volumes. And so like these streetscaping changes would really do most of the work in terms of, you know, reducing vehicle volumes and speeds and kind of calming traffic so that, you know, you're not feeling like you need a flashing light or whatever to get the driver's attention that you're there.
Thanks, Jack. Any other questions? Comments?
Yeah, maybe we can wrap up, and then if any last minute questions come in while we're wrapping up, we can answer those too. We still got extra time.
All right, then, it sounds good. Isaac, if you could take it to the next slide then. And so this isn't the only feedback opportunity. We also have an online survey available. So you can right now take out your cell phones and scan the QR code and access the survey and provide additional comments and your feedback about the preferred option. So there's that. And then also the Project Engage page is up and live as well. And the QR code is also available on the slide here. So feel free to check out more information on the Engage page as well. And Isaac, I'd move to the next. I'm not seeing any other questions come up or comments. So also just want to say again, thank you so much for taking the time, the hour out of your day to share your input and questions and comments with us. The feedback that you provided today will help inform the project team's development of the final recommended option to improve 2nd Avenue North. In terms of next steps, in the summer, we will finalize a recommended plan based on feedback, of course, and technical analysis, and present to the Standing Policy Committee on Transportation. The date has not yet been determined, but that will be happening in the summer. So thanks again for coming out and sharing your feedback. We really appreciate it, and we hope you also fill out the survey. So with that, thanks to the presenters and everyone who participated today. Thanks so much. Have a nice evening, everyone.